If you look at education outcomes today, one pattern stands out clearly. Boys are falling behind girls starting from a very young age. This gap isn't just limited to college, it begins in elementary school and continues through high school. For years, this trend was largely ignored or downplayed, but the data has become too consistent to overlook. Today, we're going to examine what's happening in K-12 classrooms and why so many boys are struggling to keep up. From the earliest grades, boys lag behind girls in reading and writing. On average, girls outperform boys in reading assessments as early as 4th grade, and this gap often widens as students get older. By 8th grade, the difference in reading scores between boys and girls is significant in most states. Boys are also more likely to be placed in special education programs and are diagnosed with learning disabilities at significantly higher rates than girls. While some of this can be attributed to differences in development and behavior, the size and consistency of these gaps suggests that something more systematic is at play. The differences become even more visible when we look at discipline and academic performance. Boys are suspended and expelled at much higher rates than girls, often 2 to 3 times higher depending on the district. They also have lower high school graduation rates. In many school districts across the country, the gap between boys and girls in graduation rates is now larger than the gaps between different racial or ethnic groups. These patterns have been developing for decades, yet they rarely receive the same level of attention or policy focus as other educational disparities. There are several factors that likely contribute to these outcomes. On average, boys mature more slowly than girls, particularly in areas related to self-regulation, attention, and verbal skills. This can put them at a disadvantage in traditional classroom settings that reward sitting still for long periods, following detailed instructions, and completing written assignments. Additionally, the teaching profession has become overwhelmingly female over the past several decades. While many female teachers do an excellent job, some research suggests that boys may respond better to different teaching styles, classroom structures, and levels of physical activity than what is currently common in most schools. Over the past several decades, many education reforms and classroom practices shifted toward approaches that emphasize collaboration, verbal expression, emotional processing, and reduced competition. Research on average developmental differences suggests these methods tend to align more closely with how girls develop and learn. During this same period, approaches that often benefit boys, such as greater structure, physical activity, clear behavioral expectations, and opportunities for competition, received significantly less emphasis in many schools and policy discussions. As a result, boys have fallen further behind in reading, writing, and overall academic engagement, while receiving fewer targeted supports designed around how they typically learn and develop. This early gap in education has serious long-term consequences. Boys who struggle in school are more likely to drop out, less likely to attend college, and more likely to face difficulties in the job market later in life. These outcomes don't just affect individual young men, they also impact family formation, economic mobility, and broader social stability. When large numbers of boys are not thriving in the education system from an early age, it becomes harder for them to establish themselves economically as adults. This, in turn, affects their ability to form stable families. The nuclear family remains the foundation of a healthy society, and when young men are falling behind from the very beginning of their education, that foundation is quietly weakened for the next generation. The core issue isn't that boys are incapable of succeeding in school. The data shows that when educational environments are better aligned with how boys develop and learn, including more structure, physical movement, competition, hands-on activities, and clear behavioral expectations, they perform much better. However, for several decades, the education system has largely moved in the opposite direction. If we want to reverse the decline of young men in education and beyond, we need to start paying serious attention to how boys are doing in K-12 classrooms, not just in college. The earlier we address this gap, the better chance we have of improving outcomes for an entire generation of young men. Thanks for watching Clarity with Maria. If you value honest, data-driven analysis that doesn't shy away from uncomfortable truths, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. New videos every Wednesday and Saturday. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.